If you knew our guest when he was just 6 years old, you might have had a feeling that he was going to go on and become a Forbes under 30 winner and start a business turning over 8 figures in revenue. And we are delighted to say that he has done just that. Fresh from being announced on the Forbes 30 under 30 winner list, Michael Martocci is a lifelong entrepreneur and founder of SwagUp, a tech-enabled swag management platform. Starting his entrepreneurial career at the age of 6 selling yogurt, baseball cards and iced tea outside his house to his neighbours, Michael eventually found himself at the College of William and Mary, where he eventually dropped out to join forces with NFL veteran Steve Weatherford at the age of 21. Together with Steve, Michael built up Weatherford Fit into a 7-figure business in less than a year. After Weatherford, Michael has founded SwagUp, which has become one of the fastest growing promotional product companies ever, with close to 100 employees, 1,800 customers and 8 figures in revenue, with ambitions to build a $1 billion business. Michael, the expectations for this interview have just gone through the roof. Hello and welcome to Talk Business with.
That's pretty good, David. You got the backstory down pat, better than most people, I think, even in our company even know it. So. Yeah.
I know, as I was reading,
I'm setting high expectations.
Yeah, I'm thinking Michael Buffer better watch his back now, right?
Yep.
So Michael, your career started at a really young age. Tell us about that and talk us through the milestones that has led you to where you are today at SwagUp.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think certain people have it in their DNA to just like really love business and selling stuff. You know, I kind of came out of the womb ready to sell things to my neighbors. So I was about 5-6 years old, you know, and there's pictures on my Facebook. You can see of me outside, you know, with my little stand. And, you know, I would try to sell anything, whether it was, I remember repackaging the tissues in my house into like little to-go packs and trying to sell them to my family, and you know, setting up little baseball card stand at the end of school, like at the bus stop, to try to get the kids who were coming off the bus to buy stuff. So I was always interested in it, and you know, I was fortunate. My dad's an entrepreneur, and I think, you know, subconsciously he inspired me a lot. You know, he has a business that his partners with the NFL, with the New York Giants, and he creates like these road trip packages. Kind of runs the fan club in a way. And you know, so being around that, I was exposed to him running a business and exposed to just like a lot of life opportunities in general. You know, we traveled a lot growing up. I was there to help him run his trips. So like when I was like 10, 11, 12, you know, I'd run the little, you know, check-in desk at the hotels, giving people their, you know, credentials and you know, their tickets to the game. And so I was like I grew up quickly, and my parents also divorced when I was around 6. So, and my mom was a, you know, single parent working, you know, in finance in New York City. So I spent a lot of time alone. So I think I kind of was forced to grow up a bit, and just being exposed to so many different opportunities also at an early age. I think I had a lot more kind of experience, and I was a little bit more cultured, I think, than some of the other kids, like kind of growing up in my town, that maybe hadn't had the same exposure at such a young age.
One of the photos that I love that you've got pinned to your Twitter profile at the moment is not only are you at the front of your house selling these things, you've actually got a phone tucked under your chin as well, looking like you're trading. Can you remember who you were talking to, Michael?
I literally have no idea. I mean, when I always reference that picture, I'm like, oh, I'm on the phone with my suppliers, you know, getting the lemons or getting the yogurt or something.
Yeah.
I don't know who it was. It was probably a family member or something, but it's a hysterical picture. I have another picture that's pretty like iconic, I think, of my childhood, is when I was just sitting on the porch in like these overalls reading the newspaper. And I'm literally 3 or 4 years old. But the newspaper's upside down and I'm reading the comics section. But I was always like the type of person that was like friends with my friend's parents, you know, growing up. You know, I'm 8, 10 years old going over to my buddy's house. You'll end up finding me at like the kitchen table talking to their dad about, you know, their business or the stock market. I was just like weird in that sense. And, you know, there's nothing I can really do about it. I love, you know, even to this day, you know, if I go to a party or I'm around people, I get super energized around talking about, you know, business and markets and what people are up to. And I get kind of like drained about just talking about generalist kind of, you know, chit chat. And it's just always how I've been, I think.
Yeah. What advice would you give to any parents listening that may recognize that they have a little Michael of their own showing entrepreneurial potential?
Well, I think I was fortunate that I didn't have, you know, helicopter parents that forced me to do certain things or to do certain things a certain way. You know, they didn't, you know, make me go to certain classes. Like I had a lot of autonomy to kind of decide, you know, where I wanted to take things. And I think, a lot of parents get so caught up in trying to force their kids down a path because they think that's what's going to make them successful. But I think a lot of kids start to get resentment, when they feel too oppressed or that things are getting forced upon them, especially entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurial kids and just entrepreneurial people in general that have that DNA, one of the main attractors for an entrepreneur is the freedom that provides. You're just innately, you have an adverse reaction to oppression and somebody telling you what to do. I mean, I remember going to camp, for example, and I just hated camp because they would tell you, you have to do this, you got to get in this line, you have to eat this food, and it was just so regimented and structured and like similar, like everyone was just doing the same thing, and I was never into that. But my parents didn't like say, oh no, you have to go to this camp. Like, they just allowed me to kind of figure out what I wanted to do on my own. I think if you have somebody who's entrepreneurial, don't oppress them, don't force them into certain areas, and also don't worry like when they do things that are kind of bucking the trend. When I dropped out of school, my mom was super upset about it. I dropped out of William & Mary 2.5 years in because she was so fixated on me going into finance, and that was her career path. And, to her credit, she had set up, the infrastructure for me to get internships at these, hedge funds and different companies. But she didn't realize that like by providing me the lifestyle that she did, she gave me the opportunity to have the freedom to, forge my own path. I didn't have to get the safe job. I can go out and take risks. And I think just letting your kids kind of do, go with the flow if they are the responsible type and truly are entrepreneurs, like let them kind of forge their own path and figure it out and not try to, push them in a certain direction too much.
Yeah, it's great advice. How did you come up with the idea of SwagUp, and talk us through what those first few months looked like from coming up with the idea through to making the first sale?
The first few months we almost ran out of money. I only had I had like $25,000-$30,000 at the time saved up from like, my high school graduation and some other and side jobs that I had, and, working with Steve, like I just had a little bit of money saved up at the time. And, the original idea was not what it is today. It was really just to make swag frictionless for startups and to build a brand that would resonate with them. Because what I saw was that you have these big e-commerce brands like 4Imprint and Custom Ink, and I think 4Imprint's a London-based company actually, but they're these big conglomerate like e-commerce websites, and they're fine, but they're not really, they don't curate the selection down. There's way too many options. The quality is very hit or miss, and they don't really appeal to startups just from a brand and vibe perspective, and they don't layer in services that these companies need that are growing quickly. Like they don't have design services, they don't have warehousing and inventory management, they don't have global distribution, they're not providing them a software platform. Like these companies, like the Salesforces of the world and the highest growth startups, they want integrations, they want a software platform, they want all that stuff. So in the beginning we were just like, okay, let's just focus on startups. It was originally called Startup Swag at the time. And the reason I even knew anything about this was because in college, me and a buddy launched an app, and we wanted to get custom flags and t-shirts to help promote it. And that was my kind of, kickoff point into understanding like the supply chain and where to get this stuff. But I just kind of had that buried in the back of my mind, but didn't do anything with it. And then just, I was at a VC firm for like 3 months after working with Weatherford. And that's when I was around those startups, and I just understood again, like putting the pieces together, that there's a big gap. And the first thing we really did was we had a big order for a swag pack, which is basically, custom box, similar to like a membership subscription box, like a custom box with a few different branded items. And this company wanted to do 100 of them to give to new hires. It was a $10,000 order, which was the biggest order that we had ever had up to that point. Because in the beginning, we were just focusing on just items in general, not necessarily packs. And then, we realized like, wow, there's a ton of logistics involved to make this happen. You have to build out these packs. That you have to get a supplier for the box, a supplier for the shirt, a supplier for the stickers. You got to get them all into one facility. You have to assemble them. You have to be able to ship them out to people. And there was just a lot of converging trends that made it, made sense, to put together something like this. The whole idea of community building and employee engagement, the unboxing experience. There's just a lot of converging trends that made it interesting. So we decided to just focus in strategically on the packs and make that kind of like our purple cow that everyone would know us for. And then from that point on, we kind of exploded. And then, we leveraged that learnings and working deeper and deeper with these companies to understand really, the problems that they face, managing this process. And that was at the point that we kind of decided to go tech forward and bring on a CTO and go down that whole route.
Yeah. In a business that has started doing a lot of recruitment, how fast and how much do you delegate?
Well, a ton at this point. The first 2 years, I was like, every day, 18 hours all day long, starting at 8 in the morning, working till 4 in the morning. I love working late at night. And I don't mind it. Like when you're doing something that people, like you have product market fit, people are pulling the product out of you and they're really interested in it. It's fun to work on it. But it's also very easy to get burnt out. Like you can do that for a couple of years as a young person, and then at a certain point you start to like hate the business in a way, and even if it's a great business and it's doing well, you got to get to the point where you can start to, shift some of this responsibility, especially as you get to a certain size. You become the bottleneck. Even if you are the best at doing whatever it is, you're best if you can only provide 10% or 20% of your time towards it is not as good as if you build teams around you to take it on. So I would say about 2 years in, we're 3.5 years in now. About 2 years in, I started to recognize the power of just bringing others in to take off, different pieces of the business. And my philosophy is always bring in really strong people to lead certain functions of the business, and then let them kind of own that and build the infrastructure around them. And that continues to be, my strategy. There's like, I've broken down the business into like 35 functional business units. And for each of those, I feel that they require, you bring in a director, a VP type person to lead them, and then let them kind of own that and build it out. And this last year, what's been interesting is we've grown a ton, but I've also spent much less time like physically working this year than I've ever had before. And there's a ton of value in that, because you, as the CEO, you need somebody thinking about the future at all times. You need somebody thinking about, are we going in the right direction? Are we making the right decisions every day? Is everybody in alignment? Like one of the biggest things that you do as a CEO, as opposed to a founder, is you're constantly making sure that all the leadership team is in alignment and headed in the right direction and in agreement on where we're going, because that can really slow you down when there's a lot of kind of infighting or people that want to push different agendas in different directions. So I mean, the business could operate 100% without me today. There's no specific function that needs me to continue moving it forward. But I think of myself as like, I exponentially help each part of the business. I kind of free up, bottlenecks. I understand where the product can, fix and solve this problem. I'll step into some sales calls once in a while if it's a really strategic client, but I've really kind of leveraged the power of delegation. I'm a big proponent of the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller. It's all about like, what is the one thing you can do right now that'll make everything else, simple or non-existent. So I'm really into, that whole philosophy.
Yeah. How important is PR and social media for you guys, and how do you leverage that?
Well, I think it's super important. I think it's some startups that you've seen. I mean, you've probably seen Fast, for example, on Twitter. Like some people use it as their sole channel to go to market off the bat. We didn't do any social media or PR for the first, I would say, 3 years. We didn't even have any Instagram posts. We didn't tweet at all. We literally just got to 500 Twitter followers last night. Because I think in the beginning, if that's not going to be your customer acquisition strategy, then you have to focus in on specifically what works for your business at that moment. For us, that was Google ads. We realized that Google ads were going to be the most impactful way for us to grow off the bat because it was high intent. And we just focused our efforts on that. And what's good about Google ads is it's passive. You throw it out there and it runs itself. It doesn't require constant monitoring. You check on it here and there, but it doesn't require the same effort levels like social media. And then we decided to spend more of our time and attention like really building the business and the machine and the operations to support the growth and the pipeline that was being built by Google. But I think there's also a certain point, the same way that I feel that capital is like an accelerant, I think PR and attention is also an accelerant. So I think you have to have the foundation of a strong business first. And then it gets to a point where, one, you're comfortable being out in the public and competitors seeing you and all that kind of stuff. But two, it's going to accelerate the things, the infrastructure that you've already built, because you don't want to pour in a bunch of attention into a business that doesn't have the stability and frameworks to support it.
Yeah.
So about 3 years in, like at the beginning of this year, we started to go deeper into social media. I started the year at like 600 followers. Now I have over 2,000. But I think, we've had tons of traffic and customers come through social media, but I think if anything, it's been more helpful just from like connecting with other people in the space and other founders, and kind of just from a leadership perspective, just like having other people to bounce things off of. I think that's been more impactful. And we don't really push on on PR though either. We have the Forbes 30 under 30 this year. We'll be Inc. 5,000 next year. Those things are great, but I think sometimes people, founders kind of weight those things, and they're doing everything they can, to get to those things versus actually building a successful business where customers are happy. I think the number one channel for customer acquisition is having happy clients that really love the business, who are gonna go tell people, and it's super cheap and effective because it doesn't cost anything.
If you're not following Michael on Twitter, you really need to. Michael, as a platform, this is a place where you recently have been giving away some business ideas. I've seen a couple of tweets from you recently going, why hasn't someone done this? And when you're like, you know what, I haven't got time to do this, but this would be a great business model. So if you want to start up a business, you've not got an idea yet, go and follow Michael and steal all of his ideas.
The notes section of my phone is filled with stuff like that. And, it just, I think, you can't execute on everything. People get so like scarcity mindseted and zero sum mindset, like, oh, I can't share my ideas or something like that. But I can't do everything. One day I do want to start like a startup studio or something, or like a venture studio where, we can build the infrastructure to execute on a ton of different ideas. Because I think that's fun. Like if you're truly somebody who comes up with, really good, solid ideas, and and you've executed before and know how to build them, I think it's really interesting to like be able to build out an organization that can execute at scale on multiple things. But I'll continue to put out cool ideas there, because I'd rather see people do them than they just sit in my the notes in my phone.
Yeah. Could you see yourself on Shark Tank one day as one of the sharks?
I would love it. I was telling my girlfriend that the other day. Like, I like it. I don't care. I don't know. I don't care too much for the notoriety or attention, but it is fun what you can do with a platform. Like even just the small platform that I have on Twitter, it opens up a lot of opportunities. Like I was on the phone on Monday with the mayor of Miami. He FaceTimed me on Monday, and it's just, and then I met with the founders of Ramp, Eric Lyman and Kareem, and they introduced me to this other founder, Jeffrey Wu, and it's just like this virtuous cycle. The more you're out there, the more that people know what you stand for and what you bring to the world. It just opens up a ton of really interesting opportunities, and it's not even like from a money making standpoint. It's just it's really fun and interesting to be connected with other influential people that are really smart and doing stuff that's that's interesting. And that's why I would I think I would enjoy the the Shark Tank type of opportunity, just being out there and being known for something. But I also think it would be fun. I love I take a lot of calls on a monthly basis with other entrepreneurs, just helping them on their business. Whether it's just the strategy of the product or testing things out for them. Like I probably take maybe 5 to 10 calls a month like that. So I just naturally really enjoy it. So I think Shark Tank would be fun in that sense also.
Yeah. In a company that is turning over some serious cash flow, how do you stay on top of expenses, including your own personal overheads?
Well, one of the first key hires that we brought on was somebody to run the back end of the business and the finances. And I think it's really important to, and back to your question about delegation, it's really important to understand, like, what are you not good at, or what do you just not feel like working on? I think it's, it's easy to get drained when you work on things that you don't enjoy. And I think this happens to a lot of entrepreneurs where, especially small businesses, they are like, oh, I love making cakes, or I love, being a photographer, so I want to start a photography business. But then they realize that running a photography business is much less about photography, and it's more about business management and back-end finances and cash flow management. So you need to, if that's not what you want to be doing, then you have to recognize that really quickly and fill in those gaps. And so we brought in Artem as a partner, within the first year and he's handled everything on that side. He's gotten us lines of credit, income statements, operating plans, and I'm very much on top of the numbers as well with him, but at least I have that person, there at all times monitoring that and bringing things to my attention. But we use basic, accounting software like QuickBooks and stuff, but I do a lot of he does more of the, up to the date financials, like what has happened historically. And I look at more of the forward looking projections of what's going to happen. What's the operating plan for next year? What's the budget for next year? Where are we expanding and spending our cash? Like, what is the projections for revenue. So you have to have both of those things, but it's also, you can never tell what's going to happen in the future too. And for us, securing lines of credit was super valuable because we were bootstrapped. We never raised money, but we had access to a few 100,000 lines of credit, which was really helpful too. So, but I think, I think there's a serious lack of financial literacy for like young entrepreneurs, whether it's financial or just like, or even macroeconomic. I don't think enough people really understand how the economy functions and where the money flows and how that like impacts their business.
I've heard you speak about the importance of customer service lots of times. How have you managed to protect the service you offer as you continue to scale up?
Yeah, it's tough. I think, I think you have to have a ton of communication and transparency within the business at all times to make sure that everybody at the company is really bought into, the culture and what we stand for. So especially with like remote work and we're hiring people all over the country, even across the world, we have, people who are interacting with customers that have only been here for 2 weeks and, I've barely talked to. But I think everybody that comes into the company immediately, whether it's through our positioning and our branding or just the conversations they have with people in interviews and when they get on, it's pretty clear like what we stand for and how we treat people and how we treat different situations. And I think you just have to make sure that the people you bring in are really bought into that and are consistent so that when, a new hire comes in and is asking another, salesperson, like, hey, how do we deal with this? Like, you want to make sure that that answer is consistent, and I think it's similar to when people say like, oh, if I were to go through your business and ask anybody in the company, like what you do, would they have the same answer? And I think they would, at our company. So I think we treat everybody as adults and we share a lot of information. We share our financials, we share what we're working on, we share, wins and losses. And I think the more that you do that, the more you can educate people to kind of scale your decision making. I think as a founder, kind of switching to the CEO role, a lot of it is like, how do I scale my mindset and my decision making process so that other people at the company kind of take that on and are making the decisions that I would have made in that situation as well. Yeah. So I think that's really, it's just like really working on the culture and making sure that you're bringing the right people in who are already bought into our philosophy, and then you'll trust them to make the right decisions on a daily basis, and also, calling out when people do the right thing, and making an example of it.
Yeah. There'll be a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs listening that would love to be able to sell to a company like yours. What is the best advice you'd give to a business owner that wants to get the attention of someone like you, Michael?
Yeah, I think getting the attention from like a cold outreach. I mean, there's different things. There's people that are trying to sell a service to SwagUp, but then there's people that are trying to get my attention personally. And I'm very available. Like, my DMs are open. I have my cell phone number on my Instagram. I have my email on my Twitter, which is me saying out to the world, like, hey, if you have something interesting, I'm willing to hear it, because I love to meet people and help where possible, as long as they're willing to like put in some level of effort and are serious about it, because there's a lot of people that are just like, they're not serious, or they just want to pick your brain, but there's no real strategy or direction as to what they want. So I think as long as people, you can tell that there's a genuine, curiosity from them and they're going to do something with the information, then me personally, I'm always down to, connect with them. And then, from a business perspective, a lot of it always comes down to timing. Like, there's certain things that somebody might reach out to us for that might be interesting in 6 months, but it's not interesting now, or another thing that might be interesting now that's not interesting, it wasn't interesting before. And, you can work on things like copy of your emails and your subject lines, but it's really just, is what you're, pitching us at this moment interesting to us that solves a problem that we have at this exact moment, and as long as I don't say no, like as long as we don't answer your email no, then I'm probably still interested. It's probably just sitting in my inbox somewhere and we'll get back to it when the time's right. But yeah, I think cold like outreach and getting the attention of companies is super valuable. We don't really do a lot of it, but we plan to eventually. But it's really just a matter of time. And you have to do your research to make sure that the solution that you're pitching this company really makes sense for them. It's a possible problem they have. And also, don't go into it selling it. Go into it looking for like, hey, do you have this problem? I've seen businesses like yours. We've seen them have this kind of problem. We just want to know, like, maybe there's a way that we can help, versus like, there's so many spammy messages that are like, oh, we've increased the lead acquisition rate, or these companies by 12%. Like, we want to do the same for you. And we get a lot of non-contextual outreach like around software development. But if you did some research, like we have a whole in-house software development team, we have no need to outsource that function or anything. So I think it's a matter of really doing the research and making sure that what you're getting the attention for is contextual and will be potentially useful for them, and then doing it in a way where you're trying to build a relationship, not just pitch something. Like, because there was somebody I would get messages sometimes on LinkedIn, cold outreach, that there's just no context. It's just sell. Like, I think the best thing is, understand that person's business and then figure out how you can fit your solution into their business versus, mass spray and pray. Like, oh, let's, maybe 10% will answer me and have a conversation. You can have a much better hit rate if you do it, smart, I think.
Yeah. Michael, do you have any closing thoughts? And also tell the viewers the best way of keeping in touch with you to follow your journey.
I like your podcast, by the way. It's super efficient. Great questions.
Thank you so much.
But no, closing thoughts, not really. I think in general, I just posted this the other day, but I posted a picture of our old website, our original website, and it's like, terribly ugly looking, off of Wix. You can, it's all free stuff, Typeform, Trello, all these, botched together free softwares. And I think a lot of people get so caught up in like the planning stages or the stages of maybe I'll start a business one day. And if that's something that you're interested in, like, there's so many low friction ways to just get going right now, especially with the proliferation of like no code software tools and just like the internet. I mean, go to Product Hunt. There's a million different tools that you can use to start businesses. Even there's a company right now that's, popping up on Twitter a lot called Copy.ai. All they did was build on top of like an openly available API called GPT-3, to basically spit out different responses based on text that you input. Like, there's not a ton of engineering that was really done there, and they're already at 25,000 MRR, in monthly recurring revenue already. So, people just experiment, see what works, get it out in front of people, and just kind of get going. And I didn't think SwagUp would get this big, like, candidly, at this this quickly. But when I've tried it, and it's not the first business I've tried. I've run probably 6 or 7 different things at this point, and sometimes they have traction, sometimes they don't. And especially for somebody who would just see me, they're like, oh, he's 25 years old, this is a overnight success, he's got lucky, whatever it is. Like, I've been doing stuff since I'm like 5 years old, like I said, like, legitimately. So yeah. I think the more you get into the habit of just starting things and doing things and getting feedback from the public and launching things and turning ideas into reality, that's when you start to get on the track of like becoming successful, because it's really just a matter of trial and error, I think. And so yeah, that's it. But yeah, I'm very publicly available. You can find me on Twitter, Michael Martocci. You can find me on Instagram, Michael Martocci. My email is michael@SwagUp. You can even if you want to dig deeper, you can find my cell phone on Instagram. Like, if somebody's got something interesting to say, I'll answer it.
Brilliant. Well, Michael, we're going to put all of the links to your social media and to SwagUp in the description below. Thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed speaking today, Michael. Thank you so much.